Hi, James here with another interview on the road to Bologna. And today, very fortunate to be joined by one of my colleagues for the broadcast team for the regionals this weekend, in Medic, who he and I go way back in our esports careers, all the way back to kind of like the mid 2010s. So we had a good catch up on things we've been doing since then, what we've both been working on. Obviously, he's a LEC caster still, and just recently cast some League of Legends World Championship finals, which is pretty much the biggest thing that you can do if you're a League of Legends commentator. So it was fun to talk about that. Fun to talk about Riftbound. I will say we had some issues with audio on my side during the interview, so there are a couple of cuts throughout the interview just where I ended up losing some audio. There is also a big change halfway through where we actually had to stop the recording and start again. So you'll see that things are a little bit different, but we got about 30 minutes of conversation out, all on the lead up to Bologna, which I think was really interesting from a casting perspective, and also the differences between kind of doing an esport and doing a card game with a physical setup. So I hope you find it interesting. It'll be interesting to work together. It's our kind of one of our first times working together in quite a few years now. So looking forward to this weekend. Hope you are too. You'll be able to find us on the Riftbound YouTube and Twitch channels Saturday and Sunday, the 21st and 22nd of February. We'll see you in Bologna, and I hope you enjoy this interview. Hey, James here with another interview on the road to Bologna. This time, a broadcast team interview, which I'm quite excited about. And I'm gonna hold you from talking for just a minute, because even though I know you don't need an introduction, I'm gonna give you one, because it's been a while since we last talked. So I'm gonna give you hopefully a good intro, and that is I'm joined today by League of Legends World Championship Finals commentator, former Hades speedrun world record holder, shuffle up and play guest, cat dad, qualified doctor, but he's not your doctor. Medic. How you doing today, Medic?
Yeah, I'm great. Thank you so much, James. It is a bit weird calling you James now rather than Chess. It feels a bit odd.
I know. It'll happen from time to time, but that's also fine. I just kind of made like a choice a while back when I stepped out of like esports broadcasting. Hey, I'm meant to be interviewing you, just to be like, hey, my name will do for a while professionally. That's all good. But yeah, how are you doing? It's so nice to catch up.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. LEC just being LEC is a lot of fun to get to cast that and slowly dipping my toes in other places. I've done some Race to World First stuff for WoW. I've done some Trackmania stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and really hoping that my first card games cast ever, pretty much. I did like Hearthstone for half of a. Do you remember the World Esports Federation
Oh yeah,
games?
yeah.
Yeah, I did Hearthstone for like half a day there because the caster didn't show up.
It's classic.
Yeah,
I think people don't necessarily realize the early days of esports. A lot of it was just like luck of like what falls into your lap of like, hey, somebody didn't show up. That's how I started casting League. Was like they didn't have a caster. I was like, cool, I'll do it.
yeah, like the good old days of Insomnias and such, where you just walk up to the casting booth and be like, "You guys want to break for a game?" And it's like, "Yeah, I'll cast. I'll
Sure.
do it."
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
people that maybe have followed the LEC more recently, or I actually was never on the LEC. So those of you that are
Oh,
LEC fans won't know that perhaps you and I go back now nearly a decade into Insomnia. In fact, over a decade into Insomnia and EULCS days and that kind of thing. I was going to ask, like, it's been a long road, but starting at the most current, how is the LEC season? It feels like y'all have a lot of attention with, Cadle's team with LR there. How's this season been?
I mean, it's been really exciting from a viewer standpoint. I think, like with Lost Returns coming in and doing really well, almost making it to playoffs. That's always like it's a Cinderella story, and I think it reminded a lot of people of the good old days of esports. You know, where you'd have Origin coming up through
Mm-hmm.
Challenger Series, where you'd have like C9, all of these teams that really made names for themselves by building brands around their players. And I think people kind of wish that we were there a little bit more. Like, I've always been a strong advocate of relegation and promotion in the
Mm-hmm.
LEC. I do think there are merits to franchising in terms of a sustainability point of view, but having some danger and some underdog stories, I think really helps elevate the product generally. But overall, it's been a good split in terms of entertainment. gameplay, who knows? It's best of ones. Is always really hard to judge, especially with Fearless. But
Mhm.
we'll see how things go as playoffs get kicked off.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned Fearless, you mentioned Best of Ones. Sometimes things change over time, and some things are the same. It's kind of similar when I was in the ELCS of like Best of Ones. You never really knew the skill level. I was gonna ask, like, how do you keep it fresh on broadcast? Obviously, I know you've had a new set and a few other changes, but that's always like the eternal struggle, right? Is keeping things fresh while doing somewhat the same thing.
Yeah, it definitely is. I think we've kind of moved away as a broadcast from some of the stuff that I really thought helped us elevate, which is the cold opens
Mm.
and these entertaining segments and skits. Over the last couple of years, there's been downsizing that leads to not having as many resources, right? And it sucks, but it means you just can't do as much. It's one of the reasons I've started to step into other places as well, like in terms of casting. Race to World First is really where I get my goblin energy on. Like I just get to say whatever I want. I rode a flamingo in front of a green screen and pretended to fly through a raid at one point. And I think that from a fresh point of view, for me, I've changed my mindset of casts a little bit from what is the best cast to
Mhm.
what is the best story for the fans of these teams.
Right, right.
And it's about building that connection to a degree, right? And it's part of your responsibility as a caster is to be able to say, hey, this is why this matters to this player or to this team, or here is the history that perhaps as a newer viewer you didn't know about, and that's why it's important for these guys, right? So I guess that's where I'm trying to freshen things up a little bit.
Yeah, I guess that is interesting as well because, like, as you said, with like Lost Returns coming in, you've got legacy players who are telling like a new story, but maybe to new players that haven't seen them, and there's a really interesting dynamic there. So I'm interested to pick your brain more on that as we end up in Italy. I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to talk, but I'm not here to talk about League of Legends. We're not here to talk about League of Legends. We're here to talk about Riftbound, which is tangentially exactly same universe. But I'll start with your history with TCGs previously. I mean, people that have seen you interact with TCGs will have seen you on Shuffle Up and Play with the Professor. For those of you that perhaps aren't familiar with Magic, it's like literally the biggest show that is there for Magic. So how did that come about? What was that process like for you?
So I think I actually just got really fortunate, right? So I'd done some videos or a video with Card Market, the guys based in Berlin,
Mm-hmm.
because I tweeted that I played Commander and one of them replied saying, "Hey, do you want to come play with us?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And then I went to MagicCon Amsterdam in 24, and was fortunate enough to be given a creator badge for that, and just sat in the commander zone there basically and played Magic with a bunch of people. And this guy called George, he and I played a couple of games together. We hung out, we chatted, and then out of the blue, I just get a Twitter DM from the prof, and he was like, "Hey, medic, do you want to come and be on Shuffle Up and Play?" And I was like, "Yeah, obviously, like I've watched the show for years, like it's amazing." So they flew me out. I went and did that, and I was just super fortunate, honestly. It's one of those weird spaces where I know I'm kind of a big deal when it comes to my very niche internet space,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like as you said in the intro, I'm lucky enough to cast the World Finals. I've worked really hard to get to where I am. But when that then translates into people that I really admire reaching out to me, it feels almost impostery to a degree. Why do you know about me? Why do you like think that I would be good on this show? Um, so yeah, it's a confluence of fortunate events with, and this is something I struggle to say, but with hard work from myself leading to them. Um, you have to give yourself credit sometimes, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I
'Cause-
mean, and I know that your peers will give you credit as well. There, like
oh, sure, yeah.
I think none of us, you know, it's impossible to like overstate how much work goes into something like casting regularly, let alone then leading up into multiple games and content on top of it. So yeah, I mean, it's not just being modest. It's like there's it's a lot of work to do. So very much credit to you on that.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and I think like I this isn't an affect. I just want to say like this is just who I am. I think the reason that I am good at doing what I do is because I feel like I'm an imposter a lot of the time, and so I work really hard to try not to be an imposter. Right? And that's it's totally tangential to the magic stuff. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so I did shuffle and play. Then we did MSI actually last year in Canada,
Mm-hmm.
and I reached out to the Loading Ready Run guys and to the Spike Feeders and was like,
Okay.
"Hey, I'm in the area. Can I be on your shows?" And Ben, I've forgotten his surname. Little Ben is what they call him on Loaded Ready Run. Bengineering is his Twitter handle.
Okay.
He and Serge are big League of Legends fans, so they were like, "Yeah, we'd love to have you on. We'll take you around. We'll do stuff." And then a couple of the guys on the Spike feeders as well are big League of Legends fans. So they're like, "Oh, this is amazing. I'd love to have you on." So that's kind of my recent Magic history and card game history, I guess. Mostly, I just play Commander with the guys here with the LEC casters and then sometimes with the card market guys.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually started playing card games back in university. My friends were really big into Magic and were like, "Hey, do you wanna come play with us? We'll play kitchen table Magic." I built a Carador Ghost Chieftain deck that made no sense whatsoever. I think I just picked the colors of the cards that I had and put them into the deck. There was no synergy there.
That's how people start.
Exactly.
That's what I got.
Yeah. And then I did a little bit of Friday Night Magic type stuff with Mono Blue Tempo,
Mm-hmm.
which I was really happy. The first time I thought, oh, I actually kind of understand this, is I added a card into my deck. I can't remember what it was called. It's like small 1/1 flyer that when it died, it drew you a card. Soaring Scout, I guess, right?
Yeah, the equivalent, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I added it into my deck, and then most people weren't running it. And at the Pro Tour, the person that ran Mono Blue Tempo was running it, and I was like, yes,
You
yes,
got it.
you and I are on the same page. Let's go.
That's how I feel about like all of some of the decks coming up for Bologna, where I'm like, oh, this card looks good, and then finally see it come through, and you're like, yeah, that's I know something.
And then there's 10 people on the internet being like, no, a Ruined Runner is trash. You can't play this. I saw Challenger TCG just tweeted that they think Ride the Wind is bad. I'm like, what?
Hey,
What?
you know, opinions. Yeah, you gotta get them clicks as to be.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
Challenger TCG, they're usually really like they're really good. They know their stuff. Like I've
mhm.
looked at a bunch of their guides in terms of prep, and like they called out they didn't think Ruin Runner was that good, and I was like, yeah, I kind of agree. Like it does kind of do what it wants to do, but not as effectively as some other stuff. And so I was just Ride the Wind to me is so ingrained as this good card. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
maybe I'm being dumb. That's the immediate thought in my head.
I mean, I feel like there's always that lag of like everybody thinking they know how to play the game, and then people testing, and then by the time you get to a tournament, there's been a change. Like I think everybody's trying to relearn how to play against like Draven and not just throwing things into battlefields, right? So I wonder whether there's something there. But at the same time, I had the interview I did with Alexander the Great, where he was saying, well, sometimes it's got to be for the content. Sometimes it's got to be just to get people engaged. So I'd be interested to see that. But I saw the same tweet and I was like, interesting, interesting opinion.
I do think we'll see probably 3 to 4% more Rek'Sai decks than I expected because of it's a good deck list. Like with the Immortal Phoenixes, it's fun, but I don't think it's as good as people seem to think it is. It's not worth. I think I saw like £30 Immortal Phoenixes at the moment. Like they're not worth that much, guys. I'm sorry.
The funniest part about that is Alexander realized he doesn't actually have all of his Phoenixes. So I
no.
messaged him and being like, "Hey, do you need to borrow one?" I was like, "You've manipulated the Riftbound market, but don't have the cards." It's the first time I've ever seen this. Yeah. So I agree with you though. I think it'll be an interesting one to watch. But now that we're talking about Riftbound, I mean, we get the pleasure of working together on the first European regionals. I'm very excited. I'm sure you are as well. But what are you playing in Riftbound at the moment is what I'll ask.
So at the moment, I've been going through most of the meta decks just to try and get a handle on lines and such.
Mm-hmm.
The deck I am going to build, if you would like to know,
Sure, yeah.
is Tiana Ornn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, basically no units apart from Ornn and Tiana, and then you are just making sure the opponent can't score points, like bouncing stuff, not so fast, spell songers, premonitions to draw cards. I think it's going to be bad. I think it's the best Ornn deck.
Okay.
I think it's gonna be bad, but I spoiled Ornn, but not the good Ornn. I spoiled the bad one, the one that gets you the gear from the top of your library. But I'm like, I have to play Ornn now. I also was fortunate enough to open an overnumbered Ornn Legend.
Ooh, okay, yeah. That kind of forces you to.
I kind of have to play Ornn now, you know.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that was actually one of the decks I did my research on today, just to make sure I had it, specifically the Tiana version as well, like the way that it plays. So it's an interesting one. I mean, it's going to make a body that's hard to beat. So, with regards to casting Riftbound, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about is how you feel about transitional skills between games. Because play by play on League of Legends has a very specific cadence to it, whereas like trading card games, other than Lightning Helix off the top, like there's not too much moments for like energy. How are you feeling about that?
Uh, Honestly, very nervous. I think doing Race to World First has allowed me, like, you have a 4 hour block on those, and you
Mm,
are just talking about whatever you want to talk about most of the
right.
time, especially in like a heroic week, which is the week building up to the big raid. You kind of just get to ramble and talk, and like you're discussing stuff that's relevant, but not stuff that's pertinent, I guess is the best way to put it. So I think I have the ability just to converse with someone. However, there are skills in Riftbound casting that I don't think I'm experienced enough as a card game caster yet to know if I can develop quickly. I think Casanova is a great example of a caster who understands how to really draw you in through a story of a game, right? So his ability to see lines for a deck, discuss the lines, but not be overly convoluted in doing so,
Mm-hmm.
but also keep you in the moment of the this is what people have in hand, this is what we know is happening, and even then understanding that perhaps we don't have full information is really good. And I'm very used to having full information as a caster, so it's going to be a learning curve to
Mm-hmm.
a degree.
So, as you can tell, different day. So different background, different lighting, and different clothes because my recording broke. So, thank you, Medic, for making time for me a second day ahead of the event.
That's all right. I mean, I deliberately wore the same hoodie so we could pretend, James. But apparently,
I I was like, no, we don't need to pretend that. There's so many cuts in the interview already. It's fine. So we can jump right kind of back into where we were talking about Riftbound casting. How do you feel about the meta going into Bologna? Because we had the first couple of weeks of just Draven, and for context, we're both the play-by-play role, so it's more of just like a storytelling perspective that I'm looking for here rather than analysis. But how do you feel going in knowing that like there's this feeling of how strong Draven is?
yeah, it's an interesting one, right? Because it's such a big tournament that you do expect a large-ish share of Draven. Like
Mm,
in the regionals in China, we saw up to 35%, I think, in the second one. But other decks have done well, right?
yeah.
Randy's Sivir did really well. We had an Azir, Fiora's doing well. I quite like Irelia generally as well. I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people, I mean, a lot of people like her. I'm not trying to pretend that I brought that like out of the bag. But, oh, by the way,
It's your
there's
deck.
Irelia.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we even saw like Kaiser's win and Annie's doing well. So I think it is probably going to be skewed Draven, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little bit sub 20% or so.
Mm-hmm.
I think people are going to take it in the same way they took Kaiser in, being like, yeah, this is a really good deck, and hoping that they can pilot it well enough to high
Yeah.
positions. One of the best things though about Riftbound pricing is the best ofs, right? So I think there'll be quite a few people who go in and say, oh, well, like the first Chinese regional, we only had one, like no Garen players.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I just bring a Garen deck in. Maybe I just, try and get a best of card. And I think because of that, the meta is more likely to be diverse. I actually think it, like, not to toot Riot's trumpet as a person that works directly for Riot, but I think best of pricing is one of the best things they have done in terms of meta diversity, because it
Mm-hmm.
not only
Yeah, yeah.
allows people to play other decks and have fun and have something to challenge for, but it also makes people experiment with other decks deliberately, and that
Right.
tends to be where you find meta breakers, right? Where people are like,
Yeah.
I could try Sivir, and obviously Sivir still has purple, so she's kind of meta, but I could try this other thing and see if I can push the boundaries of what can beat a Draven or what could beat an Aurelia.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the best thing about chatting with another caster on this is you went to my second question without me ever having to ask it because there's a natural progression of like the meta and then widening a meta. I totally agree with you on the front of like having something else to play for that isn't just first
Yeah.
gives us such a wide variety. From a caster, it does kind of terrify me though,
Oh yeah.
because now it means there's a reason to select all 28 legends in the game. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, now I need to know 28 decks, at least to some degree.
Yeah, I'm petrified, man. I'll be honest. I think it's one of the most nervous like prep casting
Mm-hmm.
experiences I've ever had. I
Yeah,
think there are three of them. Like my first ever LEC or EULCS cast at the time,
sure.
Worlds Finals, and this
Oh, yeah.
are probably the three times I've been most nervous. And I know I'm gonna make mistakes. I'm
Mm-hmm.
hoping my natural charisma can kind of carry me through some of them, and people will understand that not everyone knows every card, but there's just so much to know, and you want to bring out the cool legends. Like you want to
Yes, yeah.
be like, especially on day one, you'll be, oh, we've got a Lux Garen matchup, or we have some random Yi Yasuo matchup that we don't expect to do incredibly well. So you need to know the decks relatively well. But
Yeah.
as you said earlier, we're play by plays. At the end of the day, you can have your iPad next to you, and if you need to look up a card, you can look up a card, and that's fine.
Yeah, exactly. I
Yeah, no one's
think
going to beat you up for making a mistake, hopefully.
I think it provides a really interesting spot for us to join for Spirit Forge, because it's odd because it's the second set, but we're the first European tournament. So like my instinct is still to come at it from not a basic level, but like an entry level, right? Whereas like I'm not going to jump in day one and expect everybody to know this niche variation of Draven and explain without the rest of the build up to it. So I think I'm hoping that the community give us just like a little bit of leeway with like, hey, let us do the basics in the early games, and by the time we get to the day two in the finals, like we'll have you there for like the ingrained stories that you're coming to expect. But like I hope are going to be a lot of people that haven't necessarily watched Riftbound for the first time that are tuning in, and I hope we can strike that balance between those two.
I really agree with that. I think as well, it's a bit different to like League of Legends, where my skill set predominantly lies, where every game you expect most people to know the game. It's like say you're at Worlds, right, and you're in a group stage match telling the story of T1 and KT, and you're not going into the first game being like, oh well, T1 have picked Draven, this is what Draven does.
Exactly.
Right? Whereas in Riftbound, you kind of have to expect people not to know the cards quite as well. And then when you get to, I mean, these are regional qualifiers, right? When you get to Worlds, or when you get to the bigger tournaments, then you kind of go in expecting a little bit more understanding. And as you say, when you get into day two, you do the same. So I think there's that balance of, in League, I say like 75% of what I say is for gold-ish players, and then the top 25 is for the elite, which is, you know, top 50% or so of the viewer base. And I think it's going to be the same in Riftbound, where the majority of what we talk about is going to be, what's the line? What cards do you expect out of this deck? How are they going to play? And then you have that 10% where someone sounds really smart and says, oh, well, they could fight and flight this, pay the deflect cost for this, do this, do this, do this, do this, and then they win because of these like compounding variables, right?
One of my other things about commentating a card game as well is like, so many times you as a viewer, you as an analyst, you as a caster sees one line and the player sees a totally different line. And like there are very few times where there is one single objectively correct way to play. Yes, there are at times. So for me, it's about like, how do you not like chastise or say, okay, that was a mistake, because there's also pressure on that. That's another thing that I think League of Legends players coming to their first card game may not necessarily understand, is like a feature match is intense for like playing like that. I mean, you had the recording as we were talking about earlier with Shuffle Up and Play, and I'm sure even that with cameras that are recording and very experienced people, you're like, if I make a mistake here, everyone is going to call me out on it. So
which I did, by the way. We had to go back and have a look at one of my plays and be like, is this okay? Technically, it's a misplay. Is it fine? So yeah, it's just nerve-wracking. And alongside that, like as a caster, you see a line, and maybe it's because you have perfect information, and the player is playing around a card that isn't in the person's hand. But they don't know that, right? You just don't know what's going on. So I think there is a lot of leeway both for the players and hopefully for the casters to a degree. Not saying we're underprepared or unprepared, but I think it is, unless you've been playing the game from day one and dedicating yourself to being a Riftbound caster, I think it's really hard to be fully prepared for a tournament like this.
I think so. And then there's a lot of variance anyway. The last bit about casting is the difference, I think, for you and I especially. A difference towards the more recent career, but not so much of a difference from the beginning. Being an open tournament, or at least 1,500 people in the main event, there is no way you and I can tell everybody's story that is there. There is no way you and I can know everybody's story that is there. But when we've got 10 teams at an LEC or in a ULCS or like a World Finals where you've got 10 players and you followed them for a year, those stories are ingrained. So that's another thing where I'm like, I hope we get some interesting stories, but also some leeway to tell some new stories that people maybe aren't familiar with already.
Yeah, and I think that's where the interviews post games really help you shine, right? You go around, you talk to people, you talk to the winners, but hopefully we also get some time to talk to people that like lose out in the rounds if they're playing fun legends. I was watching a series yesterday. I think it was the Runes and Rift 1K Invitational, and there was a guy that brought out a Sivir Mind Splitter deck with
Mm-hmm.
Mauser Heart in it, and I was just like, I did not think of this tech. Like he was recurring his Mind Splitters with like Treasure Trove and such. And I was like, oh, I didn't think about the fact you can play my what's the card called? Oh, it bounces a unit to your hand, and it's a gear.
It's the
Something. It's a gear that bounces
yep.
units to your hand.
I
He was
I
yeah,
had this in my prep yesterday as well. I watched the same series,
exactly.
the Civ and Fizz one.
Yeah, but he was bouncing it to his hand, and it was just like I didn't think about the fact you could just like Mind Splitter 7 times in a game, and now this is a tech I need to think about. Where most Civ decks aren't going to do that, but you need those niche things in your head to be able to really stay on top of it all.
Yeah, and that series itself was full of so much stuff. That Sivir and the Ezreal, and then like the Ezreal deck that was doing all the bouncing and stuff with the Arcane Shift as well. Yeah, it's all. But there was so much in that series to learn from. No wonder there's so many mixed things, because both decks just wanted to play big units all the time.
Yeah.
The Arcane Shift on the Thousand-Tailed Watcher to come back in -6. Yeah, I learned so much in that series. So, but I mean, that'll go to tell people we're not underprepared in any way. There's just a lot to prepare with how many series there have been so far. I won't take too much more of your time, but I am asking every one of my interviewees the same questions, and that is, what is your favorite card to play in Riftbound?
Favorite single card? Probably Spellsonger at the moment.
Okay.
I mean, I love Ornn. He connects to something inside me, and it was my spoiler card. I think we talked about that earlier in the interview. And so giving on Ornn Deflect 4 to me, that's just vibes. You know, it's you just want to wipe out all of your power, all of your runes. Yeah, cool. I'm good. I'll sit here.
I played a game when someone gave it Deflect 6 by putting another spell song, and I was like, well, I guess I just lose then. I guess that's just never gonna die. Least favorite card to play against?
I mean, it's probably in Origins it was either Thousand Tail Watcher or Mind Splitter. It was just not fun to play into. Oh, it's is it Fight or Flight or is it Cold Shot?
Drawing or moving?
Yeah, that's the question, right? Like, no.
Oh, I see.
Sorry, I'm asking myself if it's Fight or, because I hate Fight or Flight because it's a Draven player, and I hate Cold Shot because it's card draw, and I don't tend to play very card draw heavy decks. I'll go Cold Shot. I think Cold Shot is really annoying, especially when people are using Ezreal to play to get the repeat cost for free.
Yes.
When people are just cycling through their whole deck, and I'm sitting there like I have 2 cards in hand. One of them's a not so fast, and the other is like a Tiano or something. Like, go ahead, do what you want, but I think the more game actions my opponents take, the more tilted I get generally.
I totally get that. Coming from Magic, when I saw that, like with a gear and an Ezreal, you can pay nothing and scry to draw one twice, or like take one of them twice. I was like, for free? Really? Nothing? Cool, that's broken, and someone's definitely going to break that. Are there any cards you think are underrated currently right now in Riftbound?
Underrated? I mean, like, for pet decks, Jace Mana Progress. Everyone plays it in the same way. It's Jace Vanguard's Armory, right? But I do think, like, when we see set 3, set 4 come out, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little bit more Jace love, and we start to see some people play a few more Jaces. Sure. I think Jace Vanguard's Armory is a lot of fun, and so I'll say it's underrated because everyone looks at it as just a bulk rare, but I think it's a little better than that.
I think that is very fair. Just one more broken card away from making it
exactly.
OP.
As soon as you can put 6 things that cost 7 energy into your deck that you can get out with your Jace, at that point it's pretty consistent, you know?
Yeah.
At that point you're pretty happy.
Yeah, that is true. We'll see what the next sets have for us. I'll do a wrap up right at the end of our stream on the weekend. But other than for Riftbound, where can people find you online? Where can people see your casting, your commentary?
Pretty much just look up Medic casts on all the main platforms. I'm doing more, hopefully doing more TikTok content around Riftbound. So I'm over there. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I am on Blue Sky, although I don't do much on it. And then if you want to watch LEC, I'm wherever you watch LEC, twitch.tv/LEC, I think.
Cool.
I usually watch on YouTube. You can watch on YouTube.
Yeah, makes sense. I'll be honest. If people are at this video, they probably found you from your social media anyway. So I
True.
bet I want to give you the opportunity to
I
to plug
appreciate
your
it.
stuff anyway. So for people that want to see both of us on a Riftbound broadcast, you can this coming weekend, which is the 21st and 22nd of February. We'll be live from Bologna on the official Riftbound YouTube and Twitch channels. We'll be commentating the event with Amy, who's a Pokemon caster, and Leonard, who's a Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh caster. Looking forward to working with the both of them. We shall see you on the weekend, and by the time you're watching this, we'll probably be on a plane headed for Italy. So thank you very
Yeah.
much, Medic, for the chat, and I will see you in about 24 hours.